So divide 21 million by 0.21, you get 100 million. 100 million is 1% of the world's population. For 14,000 US dollars, you can move into the top 1% of the world's population. And people can break it up a lot of different ways than that, but that's what I like so much about 0.21. For 14,000 US dollars, you can have the influence of being in the top 1% in a growing network. That is the number one best move you can make for you as an individual. The number one best move that society can make as a whole is switching from fiat money to Bitcoin.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show today. I'm super excited. I have OG Bitcoiner Brian with us. How are you doing, man?
What's up? I don't know if I'm OG. I think I'm class of 2015. I really think of myself as kind of like the Gen X. Like I really think 15 to 16 were Gen X. You like pre-15, like that was pretty gnarly, like pre that, okay? And then post 2017, I call them kind of the millennials because we love them and there's lots of them and lots of energy and it's positive, but it's different. And so I think I for definitions off the top, OG is 14 and before, 15 to 16 is Gen X, 17 forward is millennials, 2020s and forward is Gen Z because it's even harder to understand them. And that's my Bitcoin crypto analogy there.
You've been around for so long, contributing so much. I love your YouTube channel. By the way, guys, as always, in the comments down below, you'll find Brian's channel. Go and give him a sub because his content is awesome. And I would like to ask, how have you started in Bitcoin? What's your story, man?
I started watching Bitcoin content on YouTube, like back then. That's why I love doing this so much. I love being on this part of the camera, but I also love sitting on my couch, sitting on my bed, watching like Bitcoin YouTube, because that's what I do. And that's what I did all the way back in 2015, 2016. I watched Tonebase. I watched Altcoin Daily. I learned kind of everything about them. And you came to Tonebase's channel back then for the price, and then you would have these interviews with Jimmy Song and Giacomo and all the guys back then. You would, I read the Bitcoin Standard for the first time after the recommendation from that channel, and that really was my experience, kind of back then. And in my offline life, I was working on political campaigns. So professionally, I was a campaign manager, all levels from city council up to Congress, things like that. And as my enjoyment of politics started going down, my understanding of Bitcoin as the like political movement and the kind of philosophical movement that we know and love started going up. And so in 2019 was the first time I kind of like switched teams, as it were, and I like turned in my resignation for the political action committee I was working with at the time and started working for Bitcoin startups. And so 2019 was also the first year that I met Bitcoiners in person. And that's when we started doing Bitcoin meetups, or I started being a part of local Bitcoin meetups in Southern California for the first time. So it's like 2015 to 2019 was my like learning about Bitcoin on YouTube, getting involved kind of period, understanding. And then 2019 forward was like doing meetups, working for Bitcoin startups, like really hammering this, every single day. Those have kind of been the two phases for me.
8 months ago, you've made a video which was about owning 0.21 Bitcoin was a big deal, which I love. It's gone complete bananas over YouTube. Why does it matter to own 0.21 Bitcoin?
Yeah, so on the YouTube front, I've wanted to make talking head videos about Bitcoin forever, but they just never, from the nature of Bitcoin or the nature of YouTube, they've just never taken off. And for whatever reason, 0.21 just hit. And so that's the best video I've ever made. And here's why I think it is, because I've watched so many YouTube videos. I know what was helpful back in the Tonebase days. I've talked to thousands of Bitcoiners now at this point, both online and offline, about their journey from first understanding Bitcoin, stacking a little bit of Bitcoin, stacking a lot of Bitcoin, and then wanting to like incorporate it into their personal finances. Talk to people that along that whole length. Why 0.21 hits for people is because it helps you switch from constantly caring about the exchange rate into setting a savings goal denominated in Bitcoin. And then the other reason why 0.21 is also very effective is because 0.21 today at 67,000 exchange rate is about 14,000 US dollars. That's a good chunk of money. It's a good chunk of money. But by everyone's fiat standards, personal finance is very personal. By most people's standards watching this video, it's not a life-changing amount of money. It's a good chunk to have saved, but it's not a life-changing amount. When you look at it through the lens of Bitcoin, 0.21, so divide 21 million by 0.21, you get 100 million. 100 million is 1% of the world's population. For 14,000 US dollars, you can move into the top 1% of the world's population. And people can break it up a lot of different ways than that, but that's what I like so much about 0.21. For 14,000 US dollars, you can have the influence of being in the top 1% in a growing network. That is the number one best move you can make for you as an individual. The number one best move that society can make as a whole is switching from fiat money to Bitcoin. And you that's kind of like punching your ticket to have a seat at the table. And so the number one thing that's helpful for new people coming to Bitcoin is to have a goal. Set a goal of how much, and a lot of people are like, well, how much Bitcoin is enough? How many dollars should I hold? How much Bitcoin should I hold? Super classic question. And I would say 0.21 is like punch your ticket to have a seat at the table, to be like a part of the solution of moving the world off of fiat money. So that was the whole math behind the video.
Do you reckon it's still early for someone who has no Bitcoin to jump in today?
I don't like saying it's so early, because I think it has a lot of like apathy in that. Like it's a fine statement. It's not like incorrect. I think it just has this undertone of apathy, or this undertone of like the transition from fiat money to Bitcoin is going to like take a long time and be this orderly process of this thing. And I don't believe that. And so, but straight up as a friend or someone watching this looking like, oh, is it too late to get into Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Like that is a hard, absolutely not, for what we just illustrated. Like the unit bias of having to like quote unquote own a whole Bitcoin. And so then you're looking at, upper 60s, $70,000 to like do that. Then that's getting into the realm of like, that's hard. That's hard to stack that much savings with everything else going in your life. Totally. Absolutely understand. But realizing the significance of owning 0.21 and getting over the unit bias, and realizing that the comparative influence of that decision of that 14,000 US dollars is huge. Like literally reworking your brain to understand how huge that opportunity is. It's absolutely 100% not too late.
You've seen a bunch of cycles. I mean, where do you think we are now? Because this, for me, has been the longest consolidation ever. I feel it. So do you still believe we have another year ahead for this bull market? Are we finishing 2025, 2024? What do you think?
The exchange rate of Bitcoin to fiat money 100% is a super important metric, and the Bitcoin movement needs that number to go up. Like full stop, that number has to go up. It has to go up, and it will go up because fiat money is infinite. Like, so straight up, that matters. And to kind of your question of the like, where are we? The reason why it's like having a Bitcoin stacking goal measured in Bitcoin units, but then still being aware of what the exchange rate is and watching your purchasing power improve in real time, holding both those things with open hands allows you to incorporate Bitcoin deeper into your personal finances. Something I've seen is that OG Bitcoiners were really great at talking about Bitcoin, but they were really not great at talking about personal finances. And what that did is it led through all this stuff to where people have this just like siloed view of their personal finances. It's like, here's my fiat job, here's my fiat bills, here's what I do over here in the like old world that we hope changes someday, and then here's my Bitcoin that I've been like stacking and moving to cold storage and like I tell myself 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin so that I don't get shaken out of the volatility and whatever, and I'm like forgoing all my like new home purchases and like life family goals over here because I have low time prep, and like so that all of that in my experience of talking to people is kind of like tired and run out. Like I think people are looking for the new way to consolidate both views together. And this is my long-winded way of saying I'm really bad at even thinking about where any quote unquote cycle is, because Bitcoin is my money. Like my wife and so I started Bitcoin in 2015. I gave my girlfriend, now wife, my Coinbase referral link on our like 4th date in that same year. So we've been working on switching from fiat money to Bitcoin as our money for 9-10 years now together. And so Bitcoin has never been a like only about me thing. It's been a like consolidating our finances as a couple was about Bitcoin from the beginning. Like we rented small 1-bedroom apartments and owned more money in Bitcoin than we did in bank accounts. Like that's been a thing since the beginning. And so that's how I would that's why I'm not great at thinking about like cycles, I guess, because I have ripped the Band-Aid off of like moving money between fiat and Bitcoin, and I'm just moving forward with my personal finances. I more look at it of like where I am, my stage of my life, because I can't control what the Bitcoin cycles are doing. I'm in my early 30s. I have 2 young kids. I have a mortgage in the suburbs. Like I'm in my suburbs era, like Halloween's coming up. We're going to be the Sesame Street characters. Like that's what's happening in my like life cycle, and Bitcoin is my money.
It's interesting to talk to you guys because every time I have this chance, which I love, I hear another way to tackle it because there is so many different ways to do this thing, right? And it depends on you, your preferences, like you said, your situations, if you're single, if you have a family, there are so many variables. But what I like about it, like you said, I also think Bitcoin is money. So for me, my goal is to stack as many sats as possible because I know that in 10 years, and I would even argue that Bitcoin is not going up, as fiat is going down. So technically, if you look into, for example, if you compare Bitcoin with real estate, or there was a meme flying the other day about buying an iPhone in 14 versus 2024, the number of sats or Bitcoin you needed to do that. And it's interesting. And is Bitcoin the only thing you do, by the way? Do you have any gold, any S&P? What's your strategy?
Yeah, good question. So, all right. So first off, the fact that you orchestrated your personal finances to move to Dubai, I think is an amazing and awesome story. I think what's interesting is that people on YouTube, they kind of see living on Bitcoin. Again, I'm all the way back to like, I'm trying to break people out of the apathy. I'm trying to break people out of the apathy and out of the like, oh, that works for you and like that influencer on YouTube that's able to be a digital nomad or whatever, or move countries or whatever, or they can do that in El Salvador because it's legal tender and it's magical down there and like whatever. And I have a hyper focus on this is a part. So I work at Fold, which Fold is the #1 way to manage your Bitcoin personal finances in the United States. And so every opportunity I get, I just try to let people know that like it's not just for Bitcoiners that live in Dubai or live in El Salvador or live in whatever. The number go up of Bitcoin and the purchasing power protection of Bitcoin over fiat money even beats the hurdle rate of taxes. And so we have to kill that. We have to kill that misbelief, and we have to kill that limiting belief. Like we literally have to knock that out of our head and realize that the tools are here today to use Bitcoin as your base money, even as a US citizen, even as a quote unquote regular W-2 employed freaking dad living in the suburbs. Okay, so I'm like really fired up about that. And then to your question of, yeah, what else do we do? Like we do real estate. Like my wife and I do real estate. And so we've bought 3 houses, and each one that we've moved out of, we've retained as a rental property because like the United States tax code is set up for like real estate investors straight up. And the way that the mortgage process works in the United States, it effectively allows you to pay down your mortgages with inflation-induced like debt reduction. And so the game theory of real estate in the United States has been the tried and true way to become a millionaire straight up. And I believe that Bitcoiners can learn a lot of things from real estate investors. And I also believe that Bitcoiners in the United States are going to become as influential as real estate investors. The way that the mortgage industry is protected and given like priority control over kind of like how things work, Bitcoin is like on its path to doing the same thing, which is why I really like the word influence. And so when I'm like stack 0.21 Bitcoin, it's not, people comment this on my channel. They're like, 0.21 isn't enough. Like, that's not enough to retire. That's not enough to be rich. I was like, go back and watch the video. I was like, 0.21 is enough to be influential. Like 0.21 is enough to be influential. Like the investment philosophy of Bitcoin and the kind of like fix the money, fix the world philosophy of Bitcoin is like so intertwined in my brain that I can't talk about just one at the same time. Like I physically can't. Like I try to and I can't, because the decisions work so well together. And so 0.21 is like the checkbox to just be influential and be a part of the network growing.
Super well said. Do you know what I think? I don't want to say the problem because I see only opportunities, but you know what I think the opportunity is? Delay gratification. So people want things happening now. Like I also have in the comments, people saying, oh, Bitcoin is not enough. Dude, 140% in 365 days. What are you smoking? Yeah. How can it not be enough?
Yeah.
There is nothing else like this. Okay, of course, if you want to go degen into the meme coin, Yeah, okay, but look how many people are making it. Like the chance of you winning the quote lottery and finding a meme coin is so small and insignificant. You're gonna lose most likely everything. And plus, in 5 years, whatever cat to the moon coin is probably going to nothing. So, no financial advice. You do you.
Yep.
But
Yep.
on the other hand, Bitcoin, if you start now and you have a long time frame, meaning be freaking patient. If you want to be financial free and or independent, you have to have a plan. I think that's my way. So far, what I've seen is 10 years, find a good asset, invest the heck out of it. Again, people look at the final stage. Oh, you are in Dubai now. It's so easy for you. But no, it's not easy. I started 10 years ago. If you start now and you accumulate, like my friend Brian says, 0.21 Bitcoin, in 10 years, you'll be happier, I think. Right? I don't know if you agree.
Super well said. Like if this is your third year of watching Bitcoin YouTube videos or your second year watching Bitcoin YouTube videos, like it's absolutely, you don't have to compare yourself to people that started watching Bitcoin YouTube videos 10 years ago. Like absolutely correct on that. Absolutely agree.
It is possible to get rich overnight. Yes, someone has done it somewhat. They maybe bought a meme coin or whatever, but that's not the average. That's the exception.
I think it's also separating the understanding of like investing versus switching your money. Like that's the one of the issues with the, like talking past each other about the whole like Bitcoin versus altcoins and all that stuff is like so the Bitcoin Standard book popularized the concept that altcoins are printing money. Like one of the analogies that book used was that altcoins are printing money. And then that took hold in the Bitcoin community, and that's effectively what the Bitcoin maxi position is that altcoins are printing money and they're another version of like digital fiat, right? Like that's one summary of the way they talk about it. And then all people that enjoy altcoins and kind of are more broad crypto big tent, more broad Web3 big tent, like such and such, kind of they get into the overall use cases and they're like, no, different use cases for different things or whatever, right? But then the use cases were very vague and not compelling, both out to the normie world that is not in Bitcoin/crypto yet at all, and backwards to the Bitcoiners. Bitcoin people love to talk about Bitcoin versus fiat money. Again, back to the whole like investment case and fix the money, fix the world at the same time. Whereas over here, altcoin pickers, it just feels like going to a stocks meetup or any sort of other, like how you said, I'm down to play craps. Like at any casino, like I'm down. Like if you want to play that or if you want to go sports betting or go to the horse races, like I'm there and having as great a time as like anyone else. Like to me, that's completely different than what I'm like on the internet talking about, which is that switching from fiat money to Bitcoin as an individual in a society is like a great thing. And actually, everyone does agree with that. Even the altcoin pickers that just enjoy playing that game every day actually truly do agree with that. But they are just constantly like talking past each other all the time. And this is beginning to thaw and it's beginning to kind of hit mainstream to where all of this is understood and all of this is whatever, which is then back to the like, I appreciate you asking me like, hey, do you do any other investments? Because this is a little bit nuanced, but I would say, look, the two things that have changed my life from a financial perspective the most are switching from US dollars to Bitcoin as my primary money and investing in real estate because of the way US mortgages work. That, like, if you're like, hey, Brian, what is your perspective on personal finances? Like, that's my perspective on personal finances. Someone could also be a great altcoin and stock picker. And if that's your niche and if you're good at that, terrific. What I would relay then to other people is kind of what you're saying. That's not the only way. And if that is your investment way, sweet, but pause a second and tell me what you're doing in this other bucket of choosing what your base money is.
I think it's up to you as an investor to decide how your journey is going to be. And if you are selling fiat to buy gold, real estate, or Bitcoin, I can't judge you. Like, you have to do what works for you. Like you said, your jurisdiction, depending on where you live. So it's much more broader. That's why I love this conversation, because every time I have a guest, they come up with different ideas and different suggestions. And sometimes I have guests, they just go YOLO into some meme coins. This is great. I mean, I don't necessarily agree, but that doesn't mean that I judge, like it doesn't. And like you said, I do have an altcoin position, for example, because I do believe that Ethereum and Cardano and Chainlink, they're not competing with Bitcoin whatsoever. Bitcoin is money and there is nothing else. That's my take.
Shout out to another YouTuber, Benjamin Cowan, into the cryptoverse. This is different than back in the day. Back in the day, it was Bitcoin and altcoins, and then it was very separate worlds. He does a great job of explaining altcoins priced in Bitcoin. And as far as like big channels actually doing that and dialing in that concept, again, through the kind of just community or whatever, that's structurally different than it was back in the day. And he talks about the Bitcoin dominance metric and things like that. So that is structurally different. I absolutely correct. Like, Bitcoin is the base money of the legacy world, and it's the base money of crypto. And I do think the other thing that's kind of like thawing the ice on all of this is the explosion of different kinds of like Bitcoin layer twos and ordinals and inscriptions and all that stuff. And so I do, it's in what, and then I want to know what's funny about this is back in the day, again, the YouTube and podcast line was the best, if anything comes from altcoins, the best parts of them will come to Bitcoin. That was a line that was repeated and repeated and repeated. We're watching that literally happen in real time. And then we're kind of watching the old guard of influencers twist themselves into illogical pretzels, going back on all of the times they said that. And that's what's interesting about watching YouTube and podcasts for 10 years. There is a watering down effect on new people of being confused and then spreading themselves across too much and not being concentrated enough on what their thesis is. Like, Twitter spaces just are what they are, but I'd be like, I go off and on, hot and cold, on like trying to sit through these rooms and kind of like help people and like sitting through that. And my main answer to the just like classic, what about this is like, look, if you have a specific thesis that you think is happening, then great. Like, if you have an actual reason for what you're doing, then great. If you are diversifying for vague reasons and believing that everything is going to work out, not the best. Like, that's not super compelling. And because no one that has kind of had a lot of success had that mindset. And so if that's your mindset, then that's back to the like narrowing your focus and very much so like focusing on Bitcoin. Like, that's where that comes from. The whole thing of like focus on Bitcoin, that comes from the perspective of if someone's telling you to do that, they're telling you that you're not focused. And so if you are focused, then terrific. But if you're not, that's why people are telling you that. It's not to like try to bother you. It's like, it's from years of like climbing over this stuff mentally.
The most interesting part about Bitcoin was understanding what is money. I have never even had a thought about it. Like, I thought it was normal. You go to work, you have a bank account, and you buy a house through a mortgage. I thought that was normal, right? That was money works. But then as soon as you go into the rabbit hole, you figured out things, you learn stuff, you read books, and you're like, okay, that's an interesting topic. I didn't know the money was I didn't know the US dollar lost 99% since inception, blah, blah, blah. Then you come up to inflation and how much money they print, and it becomes really interesting. It's very unlikely that if you have $10, you'll make $1 million. It's actually, and if I knew how to do it, well, that would be a superpower.
No, absolutely. It's another thing I say is like, take it 0.01 at a time. Like, and so if you're not focused, or if you're just starting out, focus on Bitcoin and exactly understand that there's two different things that are happening. You can think about your investments across stocks, crypto, real estate, everything like over here, of things that you buy, watch the exchange rate go up or the investment increases in value, and then your net worth goes up and you like can move it back to money if you need to, or you hold the investment, like, etc. And then the other thing that is structurally happening in the world is that fiat money is structurally not working, and people that only hold fiat money instead of assets are losing ground every single day. That's why life is getting harder. This is what's happening. And so if you have $10, what you literally mean by trying to make $1 million is you should literally reframe it as, how do I stop only holding fiat money? How do you only stop holding fiat money? And then, why is Bitcoin so interesting? The reason why Bitcoin is so interesting is because for $1 for $10, it's the highest upside thing available in the world that you can get access to with that amount of money, period. And that doesn't even have to have like a not financial advice or like a whatever. That's just literally, if you just filter all of the possible things you can do in the world, that's why it sticks out to so many people. And so the thing is, straight up, it's get a job, get your budget in order, and then move as much surplus into Bitcoin as possible. And the sooner you plant that tree and start doing that, the better.
I agree. It's a mindset. Like I said, I go back to the gym example, right? If you want to have a ripped body, if you want to have muscles, you have to go to the gym. And they don't pop in 2 weeks. It takes time. It takes maybe years in some case, depending on the physique you want. So again, I think having a freedom of finance, whatever you want to label it, it's a journey. You have to start by listing down your expenses and the money they come in. It's an Excel. Things coming in, things going out. Of course, if you have $10, well, that's a start. That's great. At least you don't have any debt, for example, because there's people that maybe have debt. Okay, if you have both, great, no problem. You can plan it. You can plan your way out. You can find another job. You can do so many things. I wouldn't try to find a way to make $1 million with $10 because that's not going to happen. I would start a journey, start a path towards financial freedom. It might take 5 years, it might take 10 years. Who cares? It's a journey. So you have to embrace it. You have to start. And as long as you go forward, no time is wasted. Again, delay gratification, right? So I don't know if it resonates with you.
It absolutely does. I don't know. Delayed gratification, yes, but also like you have to find, like why is the Jack Daniels appealing? Like why is the keeping the $10 and wanting to hit the $1 million big? Because with the $10 you have, at the end of the week, you're like tired and you want to use the $10 for temporary relief, which is exactly what you're saying. The delayed, so temporary relief versus later in life relief. And so there has to be a solution to this, short term, how to get that relief in that week while doing the bigger plan. And the two ways that happens, at least in my experience, this is where kind of like classic YouTube guru stuff starts to come out of it's who you're hanging out with. It's you have to get addicted to not the temporary relief, not the same old, but you have to get addicted to looking at the spreadsheet of what's happening, thinking about the future in a way that's your relaxation. Your relaxation is not doing the normal thing, and keeping the 10 invested becomes the win. That becomes the win. Going for a walk for free to get your steps in for the day while thinking about how it's a win that you're keeping the $10, that's what you're doing. That's where all of that comes from.
I love this. And I will also say on top of that, it is always your responsibility, because people like to point fingers saying, no, but it's not me. I can't. I have a family. I have a mortgage. I have to pay this, to pay that. My family is here, blah, blah, blah. Those are all excuses. And you have to break the thing with a hammer. And it takes 21 days, funny enough, to break any habits, right? I used to be a heavy smoker. One day I said, okay, enough. I don't want to smoke anymore. I woke up, I was coughing blood, and I freaked out. I was like, okay, of course, smoking is another example. And by the way, I don't care if you smoke. It's just an example. Right. It doesn't damage your body immediately. It takes time. Like you smoke one cigarette, and in 20 whatever years, you have problems, right? You don't have the problem immediately, because if you had a cigarette and the problem was coming out, well, people wouldn't smoke, I guess. It's a delay problem. It's the opposite, right? So you have to reach a point where you say, well, actually, no, it is my decision. I am in charge. It's my problem, and I want to solve it. And I have to stop procrastinating or finding excuses. And by the way, I have a lot of those. This morning, I should have gone for a run, but I woke up and I was like, well, maybe. So I do these also. I'm not superhuman.
Let's talk about the opposite side, because I actually want your opinion on this. Say you did all this and you crushed it, and you are at that, I think there's a good amount of Bitcoiners that are in the position that they crushed it and set themselves up, and they did it, and they're having a little bit of trouble switching their brain over to, again, I think a lot of us, our default is to have a very like black and white view of retirement. You even kind of said it, like introducing yourself to me. Like they have a very black and white view of like quote unquote retirement. No one really knows what that means. Like, or then type A people that are good at like kind of long-term thinking struggle with that concept at all. Oh, should I keep going or whatever? How does the transition to like accomplishing other goals besides stacking, or like what, how do you define that transition on that opposite side?
That's a fantastic question. I like to think that money is an amplifier. So I had this thought in my mind, which was I need to have a lot of money. That was my drive, right? But that's not the end goal, because then when you get to that point, well, first of all, maybe you want more, which is whatever. Okay, everyone has a different number, I guess, depending on the lifestyle, depending on what they want. But it's never the end, because at the end of the day, you still have 24 hours in a day that you have to fill in with things. So I think, to me, definition of rich is someone who can afford to do what they want with their time, because time is even more scarce than Satoshi's, in my opinion. So all I'm trying to do here with Bitcoin, I'm trying to free time. And with time, I want to do whatever I want. So my end game is to be free to do whatever I wish, which I'm kind of doing. I mean, I wake up every day and I do what I love, and I'm not lucky.
Yep.
Oh, actually, yes. Sorry, cancel. Let me say I am very lucky, but I've been working towards this luck for quite a bit. So you too can be lucky if you're watching or listening. As long as you have a plan and you build it, well then, and you will have to pivot, by the way, because nothing goes on a straight line. People also get attached to the Bitcoins, by the way. They name them. They don't want to sell them. Again, I think attachment leads to suffering in general, in anything, even in life. If you attach to something, you probably are going to suffer. So the ultimate goal is to, quote, let go. I think that's how I see life. So I use Bitcoin for now to achieve time. That's my trade, because there's always a trade in anything. And then, when they say whenever you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. It's true. Like in Dubai now is 9:00. I'm here with you having a crack. I don't care. I'm not here thinking, I have to talk to Brian, again, but I have to, I'm loving this. I'm choosing to wake up in the morning to come into the studio and record videos. And I believe that anyone can achieve anything they want, but they have to put the work. So for now, my trade is fiat into Bitcoin to free time. And at some point, I'll have to relevel it.
Like I'd use the word trade instead of sell. Like we are landing that transition is what brings the entire movement full circle. Landing that transition brings the entire movement full circle. Currently, we live in a hybrid society with multi-currencies. And will that continue for a long time? Will it continue for a short time? Totally. But also, that transition, everyone individual is moving at a different rate. And so it's like this is where I think then the technology kind of analogies are helpful. Everyone has a different technology level adoption of which phone they're running, which software on the phone are they running, which computer are they running, do they already have the self-driving car, or are they still doing the first car, all of that stuff. Money is no different. So it's like, have you switched from the old money to the new money yet, and are you using the new money financial tools at the same time? And then it's the same thing as like a video game system of like when you buy the new video game system, sometimes you still want to play the previous games on there. So it's backwards compatible. Like this is a technology thing from the beginning. And so Bitcoin and money that has sitting in Bitcoin instead of fiat is still backwards compatible and forwards compatible. And like that's the mindset that has to like continue shifting for the movement to continue going, because it's not like that's it, like providing value to your life. And it as savings is providing value to your life. But then a lot of people are hitting that stage where the ROI, like the cost benefit analysis of adding another Bitcoin versus adding like an offline life goal is like, it's moving. Like 5-6 years ago, it was a lot, like there weren't as many people that had hit that tipping point. It's beginning to, a lot more people are hitting that tipping point, which is positive for the movement, because then that moves everything, full circle. And so people are literally achieving, like, it sounds cheesy, but like they're literally achieving their dreams because they use Bitcoin instead of fiat money. And that as a loop is good. And so I would say that's happening in real time. Like you have the ability to achieve dreams, and even in a day-to-day sense, the reason why Bitcoin meetups and like conferences and all this stuff is important, and like talking to local small businesses is important, because even getting like tonight, Bitcoin meetup in my area, and like the bar that I go to takes Bitcoin. So like even that ritual of doing that, I don't think that's cheesy at all. Like that's literally in real time using Bitcoin instead of fiat money.
When you trade, I love, by the way, your comment, instead of sell, when you trade Bitcoin for fiat, you are empowering someone else to catch it and then start their own journey.
Yes.
Because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't even say 21 million because there is no chance. It's way less. Some is not even mined yet, but whatever. Some has been lost, some has been blocked, so way less than that. So this thing is scarce. That's why I also like it. But at the same time, when you have the opportunity to trade it for something else, your karma is actually doing a good thing, because you're allowing someone else in the world to catch it. So it's actually a good thing. I like it.
I completely agree with that. I think there's a giant analogy of like, look, like drinking fair trade coffee is the right thing to do, period. Using fair trade money is the right thing to do, period. Like fiat money is not positive for the world. Like it's not positive. And so every time that you kind of like remain entrenched in it, it's not positive. And now, okay, so that sentence, again, back to the like OG Bitcoiners were great at saying that part, but then they weren't great at saying kind of like the next part. And it was like, oh, so if you sell back to fiat, you're empowering the old system, which rings true a little bit, right? Like that rings true. And I've said that, I've listened to people that have said that, like that on its face logic is there, totally. The part that's a little bit different is ripping that mental block away and more looking at your entire life as like what percentage of my savings touches Bitcoin? What percentage of my day-to-day fluid funds touches Bitcoin? What percentage of my like other investments, and am I tracking the ROI measured in USD and Bitcoin? And then so I can measure my entire net worth measured in USD, and like what percentage of my brain is functionally engaging the dual currency world that we're in, rather than like not doing the mental work of like keeping it all separated and just being like, yeah, one day a light switch will flip, and like then hyper Bitcoinization, and then we'll all be in heaven. And like no, you and me and everyone watching doing the mental work of that right now is what creates hyper Bitcoinization. Like that work and communication is what creates hyper Bitcoinization.
Do you have a number per se? I know I'm asking something difficult, but I've gone in and out, back and forth with different guests on the topic, because I am trying to also to figure it out. Because, for example, I found that maybe 30% is a little bit too much in cash. I mean, or your entire portfolio. So that something happens, you can use it. Do you have a number you stay in?
I have an answer. I think if you forced me to say an answer, the answer would be somewhere between 0 and 10% held in USD. But what I would lean increasingly towards is 0, because of credit lines. So we track our net worth on an Excel, like on a Excel spreadsheet, and I have it all graphed. And then I have the real estate, Bitcoin, and USD all color coded. And so if you looked at a line chart of what's happening, I keep the USD like below the 0 axis. So it's constantly floating at we have a constant dollar short on at about this level. And then if we accomplish a life goal and it dips to this level, then we use our assets, mainly liquid Bitcoin, to top up and bring it back to the like managed risk level, right? And so that's an answer very specific to our situation and very specific to kind of, I very much speak through a US lens of how like different tools work, but I would say that credit lines provide short-term liquidity, and then Bitcoin is money.
One of the reasons why you made this because you are tracking it, right? We go back to the same discussion we had earlier. And again, it depends if I have passive income, active income. Of course, if I had a job 9 to 5 and I had some sort of a US income, well, I could be maybe 100% in Bitcoin, because who cares?
Absolutely.
I have my job. But on the other hand, or if I have a property, if I a rental, whatever, then it makes sense. But on the other hand, if I have no income whatsoever, then it might be a different strategy. So I don't think there is one size to fit them all, depending on your mindset, your situation. If you have to, if you have family, if you have kids, there's so many variables. But I like to pick brains because, there is so many ways to play the game. And
I love the question. I absolutely love the question. And the reason why is because back in the day when the question would be asked, most of the time the guest would say that they have all their Bitcoin. And then because of the way the exchanges worked back in the day, you didn't want to be doing a lot of buys and sells all at one time because the tooling wasn't good back then. So people would top up their fiat on like a quarterly or 6 months or annual basis. And that's what a lot of the early people were doing. And then we kind of got stuck in this like hodl only, never sell phase. And now we're in the phase of the tooling is good enough today, and the understanding of, I think a lot of us also, this is me speaking personally, a lot of us kind of got over the like libertarian aspects of like selling funds to government, like taxes fund the government, which is sure, but also money printing funds the government, and like you choosing to not sell it, like the drops in the bucket of that actually don't line up to the like philosophical impact that you think you're making. And my brain had to climb over that. But now that my brain is over that, and now that we're through the like quarterly top up phase, we're through the like never sell phase, now we're in the like, I would call it the like mature Bitcoin personal finance developing phase, that like Bitcoin is straight up money. The tooling is straight up here to use it as your main money. And that flywheel is off to the races. But like holding Bitcoin on a 1 day timeline versus fiat, mathematically, most of the time works out. And then when you take that over 365 days, it all like works out. And then when you work in US like tax loss harvesting, it then even works out again. So Bitcoiners have to like level up and become sophisticated people. And I don't mean that in like a, sell out way and like, the movement's dead and now it's all about finance or whatever. I actually mean the complete opposite. Like, I actually think it's super good that, look, because like rich people influence the world. Like, just put it bluntly, like people that are rich and have a lot of money influence the world. Bitcoiners need to understand how to influence the world and how to like participate in making the world like a better place. And part of that is like leveling up your own brain. So stop being in the like previous buckets of how to manage Bitcoin personal finances.
I don't know if you agree with me, but I think we will see at the end of this cycle, which I think is going to happen next year in 2025, many of the OG YouTubers are going to stop, or I don't want to say retire, they'll do something else. And we'll see I mean, it's already happening. I mean, like anything, you know, things are not forever. So I think we'll see a big shift. And like you said so well in the beginning, I think the influencers are going to start singing a different song, and it's going to influence the next generation. I can see it already happening.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Any books to recommend? It's a question I've been asked a lot.
I'm going to repeat a book for myself. I need to read this book. It's called The Anatomy of the Swipe, and it has to do with card networks and the way that fiat money moves in the United States. And I actually believe that Bitcoiners, by learning the way that like current fiat money moves, it's going to empower us to like build tools that continue to make it happen even faster. And so this is a recommendation to myself that I need to read this.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll take a note and I'll do it myself. I have not read the book, so I'll add it in my collection. I like to watch and consume content more than reading books, but there is nothing like holding a physical book, right? When you read it and when you finish it, it's like an accomplishment. So thank you for that. But Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure. I would love to do this again, so let's keep in touch. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Absolutely. See you, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.